Okay, here we are. I hopefully this is working. I'm actually going to go on and check. Hi, Julie.
Hi, Susie.
It's so good to see you.
Good to see you.
Um, this is new to us. We are used to doing hold on. We have like 2 more minutes before we are going to actually go live here or wait for people to join. Um,
I'm gonna take
super
a picture of us. This is so exciting.
Yeah, it is. Let me just go home and see how I can find lives. I should have brought a okay. So I should have brought a Kleenex for my nose because you know what, with my all my brain stuff, it's
Yeah.
okay. So we're gonna get started. I don't even this is new to us, so this is super exciting. And let's just do introductions first. So just give people a couple extra minutes because if people are like me, they are not always on time. I'm going to get rid of this media because I try to be on time. However, that you know me, that doesn't always work. Okay, I'm just checking to make sure I can manage the participants and what comes up. So, we're going to get started. I am so excited about doing this. This is like dreams being lived, and as you know, I had done started a podcast a couple years ago and got sick. And so this is kind of getting back into the game, and I thought it was super important to get together as two licensed clinical therapists and start talking about what I would term, and you probably have a different terminology for it, but really just what I would call the diagnosis epidemic. I get so irritated on social media when I hear, and we all know this, right? Anybody that's on social media is going to understand the word narcissist. We didn't hear about this word even 5 years ago, not right? Narcissism and
Or
gaslighting.
what they think narcissism is.
Yes.
Sorry.
Yes, exactly. No, no, no. Exactly. And so we this is so when I get on and so to give some context for those that are on, we Julie and I have both been licensed clinical therapists for she's been longer than I have. So I'll do my introduction. I'm going to let her do hers and then we're going to talk about how this was born, where my shifts have been in creating the Susie method, which we're going to talk about today. And Julie and I have known each other since we were 7 years old. We went to little Catholic school together. And oh, by the way, we're both wearing cross necklaces. It's cute. And we have both that transformation through our lives has been, a lot to talk about too. But um, so we've known each other for a really long time. And Julie actually became a licensed clinical therapist before I did. But I'm a licensed clinical therapist. I have been for turn on my silent mode. This is the fun about lives. This is real life stuff. Um, and I've been for about a little over 20 years, and you're going to hear a little bit of my North Dakota accent because every time I say about now, people where I live in the state that I live in now always point it out. That is my, can you hear that dinging? Okay, that would be my computer and on my Mac. I don't know how to turn that off. So
Yeah,
we're going,
it is what it is. It's
yeah.
okay.
Yeah. And so 20 years, 20 plus years as a licensed clinical therapist. I've been in my profession for about 27 years, and that is in the social work arena. And I used to do a lot of things prior to getting licensed. So also after about, I got an idea. I'm going to put my phone. Oh, no, it won't matter. If I put it on airplane mode, I wonder if that'll make a difference. I'm going to try. Okay, we'll see. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. I tried. And this is what I love about live. I wanted this to be real and raw and real life and real people listening and coming in and really learning about our lives as licensed clinical therapists and what I have so fondly dubbed, or not fondly, my dumpster fire era, and the trauma and really just some shit that I went through, and how I came out of that and built the Susie method. So I'm going to let you introduce yourself. You can say whatever you want to
Mhm.
say about your profession and your experience, which is long lived and
Mhm.
way even longer than I have been in the therapy world. So up to you, Julie.
Well, hello everyone. I apologize again live. I have a dog. Um, so yes, I'm a licensed clinical social worker. I do have my own practice. I also teach at the local university, and I teach diagnostic, how to diagnose people, how to assess, and amongst other things, from all kinds of classes, but that's where I started. I've been doing that for about 10 years. And then I've had my own practice for the last, I believe, 7, but I've been a practicing clinical social worker for, I think it's been actually 24 years. But prior to that, I have degrees in criminal justice and psychology, and I did work with youth, delinquent youth, within the mental health capacity as well. So, all of my professional career, I've been working with mental health.
Yeah.
So, sorry, and I have children, and they just came home, so they're closing the door. Um, and I, have great experience working with people, and also some experience personally with working or experiencing difficult things and how to manage them, and how it's affected me
Yeah.
and people around me, and how
Yeah.
that actually helps me help others.
Yeah,
So,
it really does, and I think this is what you bring up such a great point because this is one of the things that I really want to portray as we go through this like 4 to 6 series on our episodes is we are as therapists, it you really do kind of build this following, if you will, of expectation that we should know it all and we know how to do it all because we teach it. But it really, as a therapist, it's when you're sitting in the chair, there's a lot of self check that happens, right? And self awareness that starts to happen that if I'm teaching this, I should know it. When you go through something and you're living it in your own experience, and I think as a therapist, it's even harder because people think you should have it all together, that you don't have problems, that you know how to solve everything, that life you kind of just free skate through life, which we've both learned that's not the case. We're human beings. We have divorces and children and rebel children and teen pregnancies and losses, and we live real life. And I think for me, and this is probably the same for you, you can speak to that. When I went through my dumpster fire era, which really was just, when I say that, what I want everybody to understand, it was really an experience of almost professional massacre, financial ruin. I was facing legal charges, which ended up getting dismissed during COVID, though. So it prolonged, lost really deep rooted relationships in my life. And I just really watched my entire life implode in all areas, including losing myself. And so through that experience, one of the things that I had to learn was more about myself, right? And what I teach. But when you're living it, I think as a therapist, one of the hardest challenges for me was the logic. I knew it. Like I kept telling myself, you know better. There was no part of me that thought what I was living through was necessarily healthy. I just didn't know why I couldn't get out of it. And I know maybe you can speak to yours too a little bit, and we'll get more in depth of kind of what that looked like for us. But I think to give the context for our viewers, that we really, we knew logically, and you and I went through it together. I think you were about a year and a half. I was into mine a year and a half, and then you joined, and just trying to walk each other through it. And you feel crazy. And and as a therapist, the expectations we have on ourselves, I think we're our own worst critics, right?
right, and also just to become what we are and the type of people that we are that want to help people, we're hopeful. We believe in recovery. We believe in people, and we are prime targets because we do look on the bright side. Like today, I actually had a client bring me a poem, and it was called, if you don't mind, I'm not
Yeah,
gonna read it, but
yeah.
it was called, um Hopeless People. And basically, what the poem was about was, sitting with hopeless people and how she felt
Mm,
she was so grateful that some of the things that was said, like, you see the humor in things, you believe in the virtue of happiness,
mm,
you have faith in other people, etc. So, as a therapist, those are ingrained in us, and a lot of us that become the helping professions, that's part of our personalities. And so, we do want to believe in people. We want to help people through some things, and through that, we sometimes are, and many people, not just therapists, but
yeah,
as us, you get blinded because you understand how people behave,
yeah,
but
yeah,
the difference is we can't control or, um, I don't know how to say that, like, the difference is I can understand how you behave, so I have empathy for you, but why aren't you being nice to me? I'm
yeah,
doing this for you, why aren't you being nice? And understanding, and then you get so far into it that you're like, "Wait a minute, am I crazy?"
mhm.
And I know we'll go into this further, but, like, there's times where, I would call Susie and say, "This is happening," and she'd say, "Oh, you're at this stage now." And I'd be like, "Okay," and then it's true. So then I was at that stage, and
Really,
then
you're like, "Why are you yelling at me?"
I sound
I
like
just
that
I
on
don't
the
like, I want you to get
me.
out of it, I don't want you to have to go through and at the end of yours, there were those threats, right? Like, of the profession, and
Yeah.
it really holds
Mhm.
it held me too, and so I
Yeah.
think yeah, but I
There's
love that
fear,
because
yeah.
yeah, go ahead.
And there's fear that as a therapist, how could someone respect me, understand me, or trust me
Oh,
when, well, people had said, "Well, if you're a therapist, why'd that happen to you?" Because of
mm,
who I am,
yeah,
not because I'm inadequate. It's because of, like that poem said, like, I sit with people in anguish all the time. So if
mhm,
someone, it's like it's like that joke, it's like, "Oh, there's red flags. Oh, it's a party. No, I'm,"
yeah.
'cause
I
because
thought
that
it was
becomes our,
carnival.
yeah, that becomes our norm,
Yeah,
right?
it really
That's our norm,
does.
and we're not the only ones. It just so happens that we've been super close for since we were, what, 1st grade,
Yeah,
and, mm, we have similar core values and similar
mhm,
belief in people. It's not
mhm.
because we're bad or something's wrong with us or we're broken. It's because of who
I
we
think it
believe people can
yeah,
be.
you just nailed it because here's what we wanna talk about today too, and this is empaths. When you are an very empathetic person, and we're gonna talk about really the terminology of narcissism and the clinical diagnosis of, surrounding not just, he's a jerk, he cheated on me, or he lied, or she slandered me, or whatever. That doesn't equal narcissism, but I think you brought something up so important, and that is real clinically diagnosable narcissists will attract to empaths
Mhm.
because they are the givers and the hearts, and they're the forgivers, and they're the thousand chances, and in the therapy world we have those qualities, and then also because you should, and if you're a therapist who don't have those qualities, you probably need to find a new profession. But our what and growing up similarly is we didn't have the boundaries associated with the empathy and the compassion, and it sucks because there is a saying that says, like, that you are so deep rooted into psychology when you can't even get mad at people because you understand from a psychological perspective of why they're doing what they're doing.
Exactly. And then we feel empathy and we understand that. And we're like, You're not a bad person because this happened to you. So
Yeah,
I understand why you're acting that
yeah,
way." And then people are like, "Oh, you're so naive." No, it's
no.
it's it's who we are.
Let
So
me do more for you and love you more and show
yeah.
you more and give you more and provide more and sacrifice more and forgive more so that you finally wake up and talking to the people we're with, like, or in our lives, because this isn't just, I also want to stress, I don't think this is even just in intimate relationships. You really see these patterns across the board that can be in friendships, work relationships, church relationships, social relationships, where you really lack the fundamental boundaries. which I go into in the Susie method, and the core values that when you start to become misaligned with your core values to sacrifice for somebody else, this is where this happens. And so let's dive in a little bit into, because in the next 4 to 6 sessions, one of the things that I think so we could talk for hours and hours. We could probably talk for a month today nonstop about all of this, right? Like really we probably could, because there's so much that people need to do to know. And I think this is where social media drives me crazy. And sometimes I just have to turn it off, because you have all this misinformation out there. And now, one of the things that drives me crazy the most is you have, like, on these
Mhm.
social media platforms, people talking about, like, "Oh, I'm a self-aware narcissist," and they're on there making a ton of money.
And you're not if you're a narcissist, you're not gonna be self-aware.
No, you're but there's I'll go on there sometimes to and look, and you can see how many 5, 600 people, and I'm like, "You are so thirsty for knowledge and help, but you're seeking it from the wrong people." And I'm not saying that only licensed therapists
No.
can dive into this. However, you have to understand that there is a deep-rooted clinical aspect of the diagnosing true narcissism, personality disorders as a whole, versus somebody who's just an asshole, or who and really it's that kind of pervasive symptomology across the board in all areas and all relationships. And oftentimes, and this isn't to shame anybody, but it's to create awareness that because it happened to you, then I see so much labeling of people that maybe you didn't he that person didn't like you, or maybe you didn't get along, or maybe that person did cheat on you and then goes down the road and meets somebody and doesn't do the same thing. That sometimes just because it happened to you doesn't mean that this person is a diagnosable narcissist.
Right, or exactly, just to back that up 100%, just because someone, isn't emotionally involved or emotionally intelligent, or like they're not listening, and just because they act like a putz, or a female acts like a putz,
Mhm,
doesn't mean they're narcissists. There
mhm.
is there is specific
Yeah,
criteria to meet. And just
yeah.
like people say, oh,
In
that's
all diagnosis, like in all.
Just like I say, some people say, "Oh, that's my OCD." You don't have
No, stop.
OCD.
Yeah,
And just because you experience anxiety doesn't mean you have generalized anxiety
yes.
disorder. There's impeding function, and there's criteria,
Yeah.
and yeah. So just want
And part of that too is this self-help, what I would call self-help epidemic too, where so when you talk, kind of going back to what you just said, to reiterate that just because you feel anxious doesn't mean you have a diagnosis of anxiety. Just because you feel sad doesn't mean you're depressed. You may be going through some situational things that, if those situations weren't occurring, or as you resolve them, your symptomology will improve or go away. The other part of that is that I really want to stress is there's bad therapists out there. I know some of them. Just because somebody has a degree doesn't necessarily mean that they're equipped or should be in the therapy world. So I don't want to get on this high horse, but there is a reason that we go to school for 7 years, 6 years and then on top of that do 3,000 hours, so another 2 years of direct supervised work. I did mine under a doctorate level, you did yours under a licensed professional as well. And so there you should be really adequately skilled with knowledge and education, but also experience the longer you get into your career to meet this need. The other thing that I see all the time is all this self-help. And what I've recognized, and I even can go back to when I was going through this, you always hear a song, or you read a quote that hits, or you go buy that self-help book and you read it and you're like, yeah, 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 and it lasts. That euphoria and that, yes, I'm going to change, and this really hit home, lasts for a short period of time, but you don't have long-term sustainable change. And but people are all into these, oh, I did this and I listened to this, and that's great for a moment, but if you're not doing the deep rooted internal infrastructure work, and also being with somebody qualified that can teach you that, what is it, right? Like,
and navigate that for you, and not navigate that for you, sorry, I misspoke, but navigate that with you, and
with you.
advise you, and challenge some of your thinking, and that's very important. And again, no, I've never said I've handled everything perfect, and I'm not a perfect therapist, but my intention is very, like I want to help. I want to be there for people, but people will say to me, "Well, um, you know, well, aren't we supposed to be doing cognitive behavioral therapy? Just because I'm not announcing it doesn't mean when I talk to you." Some
Yeah.
people say, "Well, you just talk about your feelings." Not at all. Not at
No.
all. Like, I may sound like it, but
Mhm.
there's intention behind what I'm saying, and there's evidence-based practice. So yes, to have someone guide you through that. But like pop psychology, like someone will say, or what's the word, Susie? And we've talked about this before where, just be happy, and like
Yeah,
someone
that toxic positivity
yes,
where it's like, just
toxic.
having everything, just think everything's sunshine and rainbows and it will be. Oh, hell no. No, it's not.
No, I mean, yes, there's evidence, there's, peer-reviewed research that says you don't say yourself, "I'm dumb, I'm dumb, I'm dumb," right?
Yes.
But
Yes.
that toxic positivity is like, you're not doing, just to reinforce, you're not doing the deep work. You're not going to your core values, how you how you look at your past, and we don't hold anybody accountable, but we look at how our past and how our parents raised us in the views. And just to bring this up before I forget, because and Susie said I've been practicing longer than her. I just want to clarify that doesn't mean I'm older. I just went to school before her. She's actually older than me, but
By
okay.
4 months, by the way, 4 months. But she has to make sure everybody knows she's younger. Okay.
But my dad said, and this is a cultural thing somewhat, from where we grew up, is we taught you how to take care of other people, but we did not teach you how to take care of yourself.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that deep-rooted value system is my worth is based on what I
Mhm.
can do, the work I
Yeah.
do. You have to go through that in order
Yeah.
to make real behavior change, real, um, perception change of how you filter the world, and how and who you allow in it,
Yeah. Yeah,
right?
for sure, and I think not everybody deserves a space in your heart. They just don't. I just had this conversation with, a young man, he's 24 yesterday, and he's really struggling because he is defying his generational family system dysfunction, and he is now outcast, really, and he said, "I feel like I'm familyless," but he's like, I don't align with what they do, and he's like, they normalize dysfunction, and so part of that is that values, right? And this is the one of the foundational things that I teach in the Susie method is you have to understand. Even people will always say, well, yeah, I have values. Well, what are they? How are you aligning your life with them? And they're like, hmm. And so I think, and then what one thing that I experienced is I was aligning with somebody else's values without realizing it. I wasn't doing it consciously, but that misalignment with my own values and swaying away from what was important to me and what was my foundation and that moral compass and doing what's right and I'm always that little rule bender right at the line. Like I'm always sitting on the fence of like here's the end of the risk tolerance and I'm like right on the fence. So I'm not one of those. I have a couple people that I worked with in the military that they're very much like structured and they follow everything and I do that in an ethical way, but I'm always like right like how much risk can we take to get what we need done and whatever. So, okay, but anyway, so one of the things that I want to touch on first is let's dive deep into because narcissism, gaslighting, love bombing, breadcrumbing, intermittent reinforcement, cognitive distortion, you hear all of these on a daily basis on in social media and they're so misused. If somebody has an opinion, I see this all the time in relationships and in the coaching I do also because I do coaching. Um you know this, but it helped me kind of expand what I'm able to do in the therapy world versus the coaching world. And I don't do therapy in the coaching world, but I use what I know. You cannot erase your what you know. And so in it, but without doing the medical part of therapy. And if I have clients that need therapy, I either refer them if they're in a different state or they come and see me for therapy. But I think, we see all these words thrown out there and they're not understood. And so that's why we titled, like, why is everyone a narcissist? But are they really? The answer is no. And the actual percentage, and obviously we don't have a structured like statistic on what that looks like, because you know why, Julie? Because narcissists don't think there's anything wrong with them. So are they the ones in therapy getting help? No. Is their partner dragging them to therapy trying to get help? Probably, but then they don't stay.
Right.
So we don't have great statistics, but we do know that to actually have that personality disorder diagnosis is in a very single digit percentile that we know of. It is definitely not as pervasive as social media wants to claim it is. And so let's get into how somebody would know the difference between an actual narcissistic personality disorder versus someone who's just like dysfunctional, unhealthy, or just an asshole. Because you can be an asshole and not be a narcissist. You can have the traits, you can have traits, but still not be a narcissist. And also people who are very self-aware and confident and can come across a little ego based oftentimes get dubbed that. But there's also a difference of somebody who carries themselves well and is confident, and that can also get dubbed that when they're actually healthy versus somebody who isn't. So let's get into the diagnosis of a narcissist. And so to help our listeners really understand, how do you know if you're not in the clinical world, you're not in the therapy world, and you don't know what it entails to diagnose, how would somebody know if their partner or a family member, a coworker, a boss is actually narcissistic versus the latter?
Just somebody who's annoying or dysfunctional in some way. I do want to clarify though. Now, true,
Okay.
like lay individual, no, I don't know if it's lay individuals, but people who are, there's people who can diagnose, psychologists, psychiatrists, clinical social workers. So the what we're talking about today isn't to diagnose people, but it's
Yes.
to clarify,
Understood.
because you have to do what we call biopsychosocial. Because when someone comes into us as a clinical
Mhm.
therapist, we look at all aspects
Yeah.
of their
Mhm.
life, right? So we take
Yeah.
into account everything. And when you diagnose someone, that's part of it. Like you look into what we would call the DSM, the diagnostic statistical manual. I never can say that right. I don't know why, but my tongue just doesn't want that.
You said a good
No,
statistical.
thank you. But there's different ways, to rule things out. So there's criteria that need to be met, and for the diagnosis.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, and so we're not this is educational and
right,
informational. We aren't diagnosing anybody. We know, but we know.
yeah,
Let me tell you, and we've learned
mhm,
even more so when you live through certain things. Now it's like you almost have this hypersensitivity to patterns and behavior that we in the past recognized as just like, oh, this person just needs more support or love or whatever. And it's not that we've erased that by any means, because that still exists deep in, that's who we are. But we're way more aware from a personal level when those red flags are not a carnival and they're actually red flags. Yeah.
party.
And so I think maybe just to help the audience understand, like, even in a what kinds of things would we teach to look for in knowing that you are not in a healthy relationship, and then when is it time, and this is going to be, listen, this isn't a one size fits all. Everybody's recovery through this and decisions through this is different, and we work with that. But I think it's, well, I love this person. Well, that's great, and I
Mhm.
get it. I don't know how many times I've said that. But that doesn't love doesn't mean that you're sacrificing everything about yourself. That's not love, and we need to really understand that, especially as women and men too, that love is not sacrificing yourself at the expense of yourself. Yes, there's sacrifice, right? we all make sacrifices in any type of relationship, but not at the expense of yourself. And so let's get into
Mhm.
unhealthy patterns or behaviors that we would see that should be red flags, and then we can talk about how that can then get into narcissism without the diagnosing.
Well, even like in times of social media too, right? Like, so one of the things is when you do like a biopsychosocial, you look at many aspects like the appearance, the behavior of someone, their speech, all these things, how they think, their insight. But one of the things is their need. And it's not just because someone wants attention doesn't mean they're narcissist.
Right.
Just because
Yep.
someone is selfish doesn't mean they're narcissist. But they have a strong feeling of they want to be liked, admired, so they
Weird.
turn on the charm.
Mhm.
And most of the time people are like, "What?" Because when they meet these people, "Oh, he was so nice, so nice." But then it's
Yep.
pattern behavior over time.
Mhm.
And what they do is they latch on to people sometimes, and they get to know you, get to know what you like, and then eventually they'll turn around and use that against you.
Mhm.
But they're very, very charming. They know how to,
Charismatic,
yeah,
smart.
charismatic, yeah,
Mhm.
and they just grab the attention. They're, typically they're within today's fashion. They like that attention as well, and they want to be noticed in those moments that they're trying to charm people. It could be a group, it could be one person, right? Especially when nobody knows them and they're coming into it. And underneath, they're a wreck.
Yeah.
So, one thing, and if I may keep me on track, is that one thing you can be with a narcissist is prior to an event, there's lots of anger, anxiety. But when you get to the event, they're just charming, they're fine, they're, flowing, and everybody likes them. That's one avenue. But prior to an event or prior to a
Like a
social,
holiday or a social gathering or something that's important. It's not,
right,
yeah, that's what you mean by event.
right.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah,
So,
and I think part of that too is when you talk about that, I think something to be aware of is this is what is referenced as love bombing. And so when somebody clings very quickly to you, and somebody who has we get it we can next time we'll probably talk about attachment styles, but if you're more of an anxious attachment or you're somebody that has kind of been not filled with validation and love and you're looking for that, this is a person that's going to know that and they're going to attach very quickly. You're going to be the best person they've ever been with, the love of their life after a week.
mm,
They're going to want to move fast. They tell you everything you want to hear. And an empath and somebody who has like anxious attachment and some other things, you absorb it and it's very fast and very quick. Rarely have I seen um true narcissist go very slow at, like, we have covert and overt, there's different, but that initial, they suck you in and you don't even know it, you
yeah,
don't
I
even
wish
know
you
what's
had
happening.
known, we don't have enough time together. I wish I've known you earlier, and
Mhm.
those
Yeah,
type of things.
every ex is crazy.
Yeah, and
Everybody in their life is a
right,
problem. All their exes are nuts, they were burned, they're broken, they just want to be loved.
yeah, and they're treated very unfairly, and then, after a breakup or something, they try to then get everybody to view you
Mhm.
as the
The
same.
smear campaign.
Now,
Mhm.
I just wanna clarify one thing, we're not saying that men are the only ones that can be
Oh
narcissists,
no, this is both.
right? So, it's
There's some
both
cray cray.
female and
We've
male. So,
There are women
very
carry this too. Men statistically have a higher rate
yes.
of being diagnosed with
Yeah,
NPD, but women, oh, there's women. But again, somebody who has like, I had moments where I was like Psycho Susie. Like I didn't even know, who is this person coming out? Like this is not me. But there were moments where I was like, you're nuts, like me. And I acted crazy in some situations, but that's kind of that reactive abuse type thing. But I think too, the other thing, so number one, I would say really being cautious and aware. And this does also, I think we're older into our midlife, and so sometimes that does happen quicker with older relationships because we've gone through a lot. You know what you want. You've weeded out a lot of things, but I think what we're really just encouraging is just to be aware that if that's something that's happening very early on in a relationship, it's a red flag indicator. Pay attention to it.
Right.
And it feels good, but you have to be solid within yourself that that's not what you need to feel whole and to feel filled. And this is why we do that. This is the Susie method. Like, if
It's just
you don't love yourself the most, and don't go on me about, well, I love my kids the most. Okay, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking, you should still love yourself the most, because if you love yourself the most and you're solid in yourself with self awareness and moral compass and boundaries and values, you're going to be a better parent. You're going to be a better partner. You're going to be a better, um, professional, whatever it is. When you're grounded in yourself, you really become like unmoved, like you're not unshakable. It's not that you don't still struggle or have emotions or feelings or want to give the double middle digits, like I always say, on occasion, or throw punch somebody even. But right, it just, you have to be grounded in yourself. So I would say that's one huge thing in the beginning, and start watching what somebody says versus what they
I
actually
do.
do, what they're following through
Mhm.
with, what their past relationships look like, what their
Yeah.
family relationships look like, across the board consistently, their work patterns, how they show up at work. And one of the things that I would say to look for is this they so first of all, when you look at the gray matter of a truly narcissistic person, interestingly enough, the part of the brain
The gray
that
matter in the brain,
that
yeah.
that develops, empathy, that is wired for empathy, dopamine, the way the dopamine and the serotonin and oxytocin trigger in the brain, so they're very, they like the new and the high. So the newness from a new hobby, a new job, new clothes,
Yeah.
a new
Grandiose.
relationship.
Yeah.
Huh?
They have a right, the grandiosity of,
Yeah,
like, "This is fabulous,"
yeah. And then
and
guess what happens?
yeah.
What ends up happening after a couple weeks? Like, they get this high from all of this greatness.
And then they what was
Yeah.
that?
Yeah, it crashes.
Oh, crash it. Yes,
Yeah,
then they come down, and they're
yeah.
constantly seeking, it's like they constantly need to be entertained, and they have that exaggerated sense of self-worth, or that I'm good, I'm moral, or I do this for people. My family members don't, and they criticize people quite a
Mhm.
bit. They criticize
Yeah, they're
people like
very, very critical of other people.
yeah.
Very.
To your face, they'll criticize other people, but then you're like, "Well, why are we hanging out with them? Why are you
Yeah,
in their life then?" Right?
yeah.
Because it's they're looking for that transactional relationships,
Mhm,
and they wanna know they have power over people,
mhm,
that they can make them, I can by the way I act, I know the people, like
mhm.
family members, let's just say, I can make them act a certain way because I know how to manipulate the
Yeah.
situation. So a
Which
lot of
yeah,
exaggeration in
yeah.
their ability to read people, their
Mhm.
ability to,
They
uh,
mirror. They do a
in
lot of mirroring. They know what they should say. So you brought up something so good, and that is transactional. Their relationships feel really deep rooted, but if you really start paying attention to somebody, what they do is for what they get from it.
Mhm,
And they really lack true deep rooted empathy. They can mirror empathy and they can say they're sorry, but one of the things I always say, and we hear it all the time, that you're not really sorry. Sorry is met with changed behavior. An
right,
apology is met with changed behavior. This type of personality will apologize and do the same thing. Apologize and do the same thing. Apologize and do the same thing. They'll cry. They will act like they're a piece of crap. They'll threaten that they should just kill themselves. There's all of these deep rooted emotional things, and the transactional piece. And as I studied this, living in it, it really became like you're crying because your behavior has now set a consequence in action, when when you're in this type of relationship and you start to shift, the sorrow comes from themselves, like what they feel sorry for themselves of what they're losing or a boundary that's been set. It's not deep rooted empathy, that they're really sorry for how they cannot relate, honestly, to how the other person has really been affected and been hurt by their behavior. They only know what it does to them, and then go ahead.
Well, and when push comes to shove, like you said, they mirror empathy. They mirror
Mhm.
like, "I'm sorry," whatever, but there's never you notice the patterns. And now again, this is the therapist in me. Like, you can come in and I can say, "Oh, yeah, that person in my mind has narcissistic traits." Unless I have a history, I'm not
Yeah,
gonna diagnose them
no.
with, narcissistic personality disorder. It's a longevity. Just like even someone coming in, I'm not gonna diagnose someone unless I have, like, um, previous paperwork from another clinician or psychiatrist saying this person has bipolar. You have to analyze this person and understand their patterns. And so you just
Yeah,
because someone comes up to you at a social event and say, "Hey, wait," like they're like, "Oh, you're so beautiful." That's not necessarily love bombing. It's patterns over time, but
yeah,
it's cues that you have to pay attention to, and then you have to say, "Why am I getting sucked into this?" If he
mhm,
really likes me or if she really likes me, they're gonna keep showing up. They're not gonna and if I set a boundary
mhm.
if I set a boundary, that's not gonna scare scare them away, and so that's a huge thing for people, whether it's friendships, romantic relationships. If you set a boundary, how do they respond to their boundaries? Because
That's so good.
individuals with this, personality disorder do not care for boundaries. They do
Mm-mm.
not care for boundaries.
No.
So it's
No, they
longevity.
despise them. They
Yeah, because then they're not getting that that admiration, they're not getting the attention, it's not about them, and that's why it's not a criteria, but it's a behavior that in a lot of people who have or in oh, I'm sorry, like it's common that these people ruin holidays or they become sick or they don't go or they have some kind of they want to take the the excitement the celebration away for holidays or they don't want you to enjoy the holiday if they're not the center of it or if it's just the two of you and they want to isolate you a lot during like family stuff and holiday times
Mhm.
and birthdays and right.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, very much so, and it always becomes some sort of dramatic event, and
Yeah.
again, this is like when we're talking about we're looking at patterns, and that's what I think you look at, and so, it's not somebody with an say, for example, an anger management problem probably shows anger issues across the board. It's not just one time and they have an anger management problem. This is something that we see across the board, and you'll start to see if you really pay attention, you'll start to see these patterns evolve and the cycle is continual. The other thing too is one of the things that I got caught up in all the time was feeling I ended up not being the one that created the issue, whether it was getting lied to, cheated on, left, abandoned, whatever it was. Then I ended up realizing every time something was happening and then I was upset about it, I ended up by the end of it, this is this whole manipulation, consoling this consoling the person, the people, two of them, and consoling them when I was the one that should have been being consoled. And all of a sudden, you get this game where things are turned around. And so either it's the true gaslighting, which they take and use against you, and they warp and distort the reality. And all of a sudden, you're second guessing, and you're like, "I didn't say that." Yeah, you did, and they'll stick to it. I mean, they'll die on that hill. Yes, you did, and you're like, "I know I didn't say that." And pretty soon, you're thinking you're crazy. You're second guessing yourself, and the other side of that, and or now you're all of a sudden consoling them and feeling bad for them because they're crying or they're saying they're a piece of shit or they're saying they're going to kill themselves,
Right,
and
or
then
myself. I
yes,
you know, I do this, I'm
you
sorry.
deserve better.
Yeah, you deserve better, and I'm just not you're just too
And be
good
better,
for me, yeah, then be better.
and be better.
Then engage in, self-awareness and,
Yes.
you know, um and then what happens, they do that, and then you start to go into the mode, and most people would, because we don't want people, especially someone that you love, whether it's a family member, relationship, friendship, whatever, we don't want them to feel bad. And then, like Susie said, you start to consult and you're like, wait a minute here.
Yeah.
Like,
Oh,
no, like, and so then your feelings are really never taken into account.
yeah.
Yeah.
I call it a mind fuck.
Yeah.
It is. That's what I call it. They asked if this was for kids, and I said no. So there's that. And so I think the other thing too is you're going to notice that typically, not everybody buys into therapy, and I get that. Like therapy can be a very vulnerable, exposing thing to do, but if
That equals growth.
yes, and if it we what you'll see with true disordered, like personality disordered individuals is the partner or the family member or somebody will be saying you need the help, and they will either go through a bunch of therapists. They'll go and stop. It's always the therapist that's the problem, or the counselor, the pastor, who's ever they're getting advice from. And then the other thing with that is they don't ever stay long. They just don't. I mean, it because then nothing's wrong with them, and they don't want to hear. They cannot. There's such a it's such a conundrum because there's such a deep rooted internal unrest with them. They're so internally in chaos, and there is a they despise part of who they are. There is that, but they can't face it. They won't face it. They can't just like I could sit and tell you all the dirty, yucky, messy parts that I've had to focus on and heal over the last several years. And does it make me feel good? No. Do I want to look at those parts? No. Is it necessary? Absolutely. And they can not. And that's why everything's deflected to, the shitty childhood, or the crazy ex-husband or ex-wife, or the boss that's just a big jerk. They everything is really, if you really pay attention, how it's externally controlled versus internally. So they view everything bad in their life as somebody or something or some experience caused it. And if this wouldn't have happened, then I wouldn't be this way. Or if you wouldn't have said this, I wouldn't have reacted. Versus, man, I shouldn't have acted that way. What you did really hurt my feelings, but I take responsibility. And so there's not deep rooted accountability. They'll do it surface level, like you said, transactionally, they'll do it surface level because they know that that's what they're supposed to say, but you're never going to see long term change. Now, that doesn't mean you're not going to get patterns where they'll do better for a while because they know how to model behavior. It's not that they're dumb and they don't know what's
No, they're
expected.
usually very intelligent because
Very intelligent. Yes.
yes, they are.
Yeah, and it's not that they don't know what to say or what they should be doing. They don't have the internal capacity typically. They can't carry it on. They always crack. That's what I tell
Mhm.
so many of my clients. Just give it time. They will crack. Does that mean that a narcissist can't live somewhat successfully in the world? No, they can. They can have a job. They can.
They can have long-term relationships,
Yeah,
but that other person
yeah,
that other person, then you look at their health and their physical health, mental health,
yes,
you know
yeah,
you will see that they, you know, just like a lot of relationships, people said, "Oh, we've been married 53 years," or "We've been married 25 years." Okay, so how's it? And not that all marriages are bad, but then you look at them and you're like, "Okay, you've been married that long, but how's it going?" Like,
yeah,
is one person doing all the emotional work and being the emotional punching bag, et cetera, et cetera. And if I may, it's your story to tell, but Susie, you know, so when she'd go back to our hometown, which neither one of us live in anymore, people say now, like when we go back or meet up there, like, "Oh my gosh, Susie, you look so good." Friends of hers that knew her when she was in her relationship, if I may, Susie,
yeah.
they're like, "Oh my gosh, you," and she looked beautiful then. Susie's never not looked beautiful, but
Oh, I
just
appreciate you.
even alive and, like her energy, and just you look more vital when you're not constantly being drained and
Mhm.
managing this person's emotions and being there. And we always said this too, Susie. They're like, I'm their emotional regulator,
Mhm.
regulating this other person's emotions,
Always.
you
Mhm.
know?
Oh,
And so when we went back to a hometown, especially this one, not especially, but this one time I was there to say, people like, "Oh my gosh, you look so good." Not that she didn't look good, but she
no,
looked more alive and
yeah,
just like who Susie was, instead of constantly worrying, what are they saying? What are they thinking? Am I gonna You're walking on eggshells. That's another thing. If
yeah,
you're walking on eggshells all the time, if I may, also, like, there was rules that Susie and I are big personalities, right?
yeah.
We are, you know? And there was times in our lives where our personalities were like, "Why would Susie put up with that? Why is
Oh,
Julie
nothing all the
putting up
time.
with
Yeah,
that?" Like, there's, specifically on the phone, especially with our relationship,
yeah,
especially with, Susie and I.
yeah.
Like,
When
I
we were
wasn't
alone,
around.
when we had to sneak, um, we had to sneak calls. Oh, hold on. Okay, it was trying to get me to leave or asking if I was gonna leave the studio. No, I'm
Oh,
not going to.
is it timed maybe?
No, it's good. I think, it is, and I think so to your point about being able to have long-term relationships, that those relationships could have lasted a lifetime if I
Mhm.
kept doing what I was doing.
Yep.
It would
If
have it
I
to be honest
I
with
would
you.
tolerate if I would
Yes.
tolerate and not change my patterns, so that he was like, "Wait a minute, how come you changed your patterns?"
Mhm.
And then it became that I wasn't doing this, and love isn't enough, or I'm not pretty enough, or I'm not this enough,
Mhm.
whatever, I
Never.
was never enough,
Yeah.
when
Once you
my
started
patterns
setting
started to
boundaries,
change.
yes.
Yeah, when I started to set boundaries. But, like, Susie and I, we weren't able, like, I was told, like, "Don't come walking through the door talking on the phone." Well, the person that I did that with was Susie,
Yeah.
because, that's wasn't okay. So then we'd be like, "Okay, I'm going in now, bye,"
Yeah. Yes.
you know?
Or, "Hey, what do you have an hour open today?" Or, "What's your schedule
Yeah,
like?" So we could jump
yeah,
on. Yeah.
to
And it is.
navigate
Yeah.
that, to
Go
not
ahead.
make them mad, because if you made them mad,
Ugh.
then in my case, children and myself,
Yeah.
we'd be punished for it, whether silence treatment or whatever type,
Yes.
you know?
You get emotionally punished very, very much so, and it's very hard because people don't know. I just had a new client tell me that, her family doesn't understand, and they're co-parenting little kids together, and she was like, "They just say, 'You 2 just need to move on.'" But he is yeah, there's a lot going on. So, I wanna get we have about 7, 8 minutes left, and we have some questions.
Oh, yeah,
Um
just get us talking.
I know, I love it, but I wanna I so I think next week, because 'cause we're gonna do this for a few weeks, that we'll get into then, when you're in it, how do you start managing it? What do you
Mm,
need to do for yourself? Because I think a lot of one of the things that I talk about too in the Susie method is you have to learn the internal going on in your body, your nervous system, your cortisol, what your brain is doing, the dopamine, because it really toxic, unhealthy, very, very toxic. And I'm not talking just unhealthy. If yes, that's hard. There's a difference between suffering heartbreak, which is devastating,
yes,
versus really recovering from
from
a
narcissistic
it's so
relationship.
different.
And
There's
we're
a lot that
finishing each
goes into
other's
it.
sentences, because peer-reviewed research shows if you're in a narcissistic relationship, your brain chemistry changes.
Does
Doesn't mean, like, if someone just isn't providing you what you need in a relationship and you
Mhm.
break up, that it's not like, oh, we had a harder time because we're in a narcissist. No, it's a whole pattern.
Yeah.
It's very hard when you are in a relationship and you break up, but there's physical changes that go on with someone who's been in a relationship with a
Yeah.
narcissist.
Very much so. Brain changes, like,
Yep,
and addiction.
and
Your brain
proven.
actually can become addicted, so you're going through a withdrawal period, and, When I talked to this new client, she was flabbergasted. 1 hour of a conversation. I did a discovery call with her for free, and she was like, "I've learned more, and you've helped me more," because she felt crazy, and everybody just kept telling her, "Move on." She's like, "Listen, this is what's happening." So, here's one of the questions. He says, "I'm too sensitive and I overreact." Is that gaslighting? And so, do you wanna answer
You go
that?
on this one.
Huh?
No, well, what I'm gonna say, and then you can say, I'm gonna say that it when someone does, "Oh, you're too sensitive," or "You're just taking this personal, you're overreacting," that's someone discarding your feelings. People can do
Yeah,
that without being a
yeah,
narcissist, right? So
yep,
that's not
yep,
okay because
yep.
someone should validate how you're feeling. But that again is one of those behaviors where it's like you're too sensitive or you're overreacting
You're
or
controlling or you
yeah,
nag or yeah,
right.
when you're
Mhm.
trying to express your emotions. And so one of the ways that I would answer that, so again, he says I'm too sensitive and I'm overreacting. Is that gaslighting? One of the things that I would say again is look at patterns. Did that happen when you were in a fight? Or does it happen every time you're trying to express how you feel about something? And the other thing that I would encourage is you always have to self reflect. Do you Are you emotionally based? Do you emotionally respond every time something happens in your life that is hard or uncomfortable or you get defensive or it hurts your feelings? You have to that doesn't negate what that the other person isn't being maybe insensitive or gaslighting you, but you always have to start with yourself, and sometimes being in those relationships you can question your own reality, and I get that. But if you really have mastered the art of self-reflection and building your self-awareness, and then you're like, "No, I don't." But when he screams at me, calls me names, I catch him cheating or I catch him scrolling or checking out other women or he's lied or he withheld money or whatever, and then you're emotionally reacting, and then somebody's minimizing that and blaming you for being, "Oh my god, you're so dramatic," or "You're overreacting," or, then no, that's a problem. And yes, that's a form of gaslighting for sure. But again, we always have to self-check. So I think that that's um, the other thing maybe too is, do you feel crazy or do you
Mm,
just feel like you're not heard?
yeah,
Because I've had 2 very long-term relationships, and one was very much I just wasn't heard, and one was very much crazy making.
yeah.
And so there's a difference. Neither is healthy.
And so one of the things too, when you're thinking of these questions, like if they say, well, they always, whenever you're saying something, or it feels like whenever I share my feelings, like you said earlier, it always leads to theirs. Or but whenever I'm sharing my feelings, they put me down. I never feel heard. But it's also the duration, meaning the
Yes.
pattern, the
Yes.
longevity of it, and the intensity of it. If
Yep.
someone says, I mean,
Yep.
again, like a healthy relationship would say, "I understand you're feeling that way," or "I
Yes.
hear that you're feeling that way," not like, "You're crazy,"
Yep.
or "You're
So
sensitive."
that's so good. That's so good because then we're gonna do one more question and then we're gonna hop off. Why did I attract a narcissist? What is wrong with me?
Mm,
So this is a hard one because this gets into all of the attachment theory, right? Anxious and avoidant, and also that neurochemistry that we talk about, that intermittent reinforcement. So, okay, let me ask you. Let me ask you personally.
me?
Why did you, yes, in your relationships, if you look at patterns of the types of people that you attract or attracted, because I can answer this for myself and I can answer it first if you want, but why do you attract the certain personalities that you attract?
Well, I'm gonna be really raw and honest here about that. It's because, I feel like I had to earn love. I
Mhm,
feel I had to do certain things to be loved.
mhm.
And, I also then find myself attracted to people who the dopamine rushes are there.
The
It
bad
was the
bad
it
boys kinda
Yeah,
thing,
the
yeah.
bad boys, Julie likes the bad
Mhm.
boys. But, I I went for the butterflies, was
Yeah.
not the butterflies was not fun love attraction. It was my intuition saying, "What are you doing? You have value." And I was like, I'm not gonna listen to you. I don't
Mhm.
want boring. I don't want
Yes. Yes.
plain,
That's too.
right?
Mhm.
Because I felt like I wanted to be loved, but I that love bombing spoke to me because I always felt like I had to earn love and that I didn't have value or worth unless I was a certain way or was doing a certain
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
Like, those go back to the childhood, and it's not blaming parents, it's
No.
how it was, right? Like,
Yeah.
I didn't have value, et cetera, et cetera. But why I was attracted to it was that, and then so then when someone would, make it fun and exciting and it was a dopamine hit, I interpreted the butterflies and that dopamine as, "Oh, this is chemistry, this is
Mhm.
fun."
Yeah.
And I'm a very empathetic person,
Mhm.
and empathy doesn't mean I'm a good person. It means that with me, I just don't want other people to feel like I felt.
Yeah. That's how I am too.
Other
I've
people
always
feel
been like that, even with my kids,
disregarded.
my family. Yep, me
Yeah,
too. I
you
don't
know,
ever want people to feel bad or
that
hurt
I'm
or
not good enough for that I'm not capable, and so I love and empathy people who are empathic people, it's not that we're better than because we're so nice. No, it's because we know what it feels like to be disregarded, to not be nurtured in the way that our soul needs to be nurtured or that we want to, and I confuse the 2 because my father of my children is not a narcissist.
no, he's not.
He was super,
But
super
you Dan is such a good he's such a good person. The other opposite end of that though is like then it went from bad, bad, bad to so safe. And that's where after my second relationship, I swung way over there and I'm like, nobody will get by with anything. And this
Mhm.
kind of critical, like, so okay, we're gonna end.
Okay.
I think that's so profound, and I think we can pick up from there on next week. And I think what this is such a good question too because it gets into the attachment theories, and it's so important. Again, another layer of that is to understand yourself, and people don't even understand that there are attachment styles, and how do you move from a certain attachment style into a secure attachment. That's a lot of work. And so again, we're just working on trying to give context, but also give ideas of areas of self, because you will repeat. And I thought that I got completely different, and you will repeat. It'll just be the same thing in a different package with a little bit of differences. And so I adore you. This is great.
I agree with you.
Yeah.
This is just it's I mean, this is just fabulous, and because I just think of who we are and what we have to offer people, and just even so people feel too, like, even if you're in a relationship or you just want to look at self-growth and self-awareness, like, it just feels good to know that other people are working on it too and that nobody is perfect.
No, not even
Nobody.
this. No, and we go through our own things, and I think one of the ways we shifted it is how do you one of the things in my mind is always, what is my learn from this? And we'll get into that kind of that self-awareness, and then that building that confidence, because that takes a while to get to. But all right, love you. Is I can't wait to do this again next week, same time, same place. We got our mics figured out. It was so nerve-wracking at the witching hour.
We are
And
too technologically we did it, but
we did
it's
it.
not our strengths is
No,
technology.
it was so simple, and it was so simple. I just needed to do one thing. Okay, so
Okay,
we'll catch everybody next week. Thanks for joining.
everybody.
Bye.